the entertainment highlight of the week.
Red Ray Gun Limited presents
The Benji and Nick Show. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. God.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
Good day.
Goodness.
Loch Ness. Yes,
There you
come
go.
on.
Straight away.
Textbook.
Straight away.
And I even did a Benji Clifford pronunciation. Loch Ness.
Loch Ness. There was something I was watching earlier, and somebody said a word like that. What was the name? And he used a mun. He used like a mun at the end, and it was
Cyberman.
Oh, that was it. It was I was watching some wrestling thing over.
Hold on,
breakfast.
we haven't. Can we just get on?
Oh, okay. I was just going to say that
this story in a minute.
They used the word. They said hangman instead of hangman.
Okay, yeah, the hangman.
The hangman.
No, yeah, I like that.
Anyway, welcome. If sorry about that, I just got straight in.
I'm just worried that we don't introduce ourselves soon after. You know, so people might have gone.
Should we just insert it in earlier on so people know?
I'm not doing any editing.
Okay, well in that case then, this is the Benji and Nick Show. We talk about cult television, TV from the past, TV from days gone by. Some you might like, some you might remember, and some, well, maybe you'd like to forget. That's right, well I'm not Nick.
And I'm not Benji.
Well, I'm not Need. Good times, yes. Well, Nick, what are we discussing this week?
We're discussing the secret service. Yeah.
Oh, great.
So fingers crossed we'll have Jamie, son of Jerry, the creator of the Secret Service. I don't know whether he wants to admit to that though. Anderson with us later.
Yeah, properly.
Normally we call him up, but we're going to involve him in a Skype call, and he's going to record, and he's going to sound like he's here with us, like Benji and I sound as though we're. Yeah. By the way, the Benji and Nick Show, if you've never listened before, we do various types of Benji and Nick Show. Sometimes we set something for ourselves to watch, for us to watch.
Just you and me.
Between the two episodes. In this case, it's the Secret Service, and we have a chat about it. We also sometimes do a bit of commentary, usually of Doctor Who. Usually of something with Carrie Blyton doing the music. Bizarre, I know. What else do we do? Oh, we talk about the latest things we've been watching, and we read out your emails. So we're going to do a bit of the latest things and a bit of email. We also have a new podcast section featuring son of Briggs, Benedict, Ben to his friends Briggs, talking about stuff.
Ooh.
This week it's the cyber controller from Doom of the Cybermen.
So I tell you, that is a good subject to quiz somebody on, isn't it, really?
Well, it's a figure. He's talking about the figure.
Oh, yeah.
Also, I believe he goes on to talk about the DVD as well.
I'm looking forward to hearing this.
Yeah. Yes. It's interesting. Yes. Anything we've been enjoying lately, Benji, on the telly?
I've blitzed through two things on Netflix. I blitzed through Disenchantment.
What's that?
It's the latest, like Futurama, Simpsons sort of thing, set in medieval times. Series 1 was interesting because it was sort of funny, but sort of wasn't. Is
it meant to be?
It's meant to be funny. It's a comedy, yeah, but it was quite dry. There were quite a few poor.
It's animation as well.
Yeah, it's animation, cartoon. There's quite a few poor decisions in there. I don't know. It felt like it hadn't found its way. Well, I've watched series 2. It's on the right tracks.
Well, blimey, it was enough on its way for them to go to a second series.
I think they've got enough confidence in it that I think it's got 4 series. It's already been confirmed for another 2.
Is it by the same people who did The Simpsons?
To an extent. Interestingly enough, as Rich Fulcher is behind a lot of it, and he is behind a lot of the Mighty Boosh stuff, and he's also writing partner with Matt Berry, who features in this as well. Berry,
does he?
As does Noel Fielding. Yeah, Matt Berry there. In fact,
wow.
Matt Berry, there's a line in it. He says, "I used to be the toast of the town." Yeah, Matt Berry plays a prince that has been turned into a pig.
How come I don't see these things on Netflix? They don't come up on my
algorithms, you see.
Yeah, what is it that? That algorithm's rubbish. Isn't it?
It's relatively good. Disenchantment. It should be called Disenchanted, but Disenchantment doesn't roll off the tongue, but they've called it that. It's all right. It's one of those things you can just sort of watch without really paying too much attention.
Okay, well, I'm just going to look it up on Netflix now so that I'll save it for later.
Yeah, you might like it.
Well, I'll have to search for it because it's not come up on mine at all. Disenchantment. Oh, that's it. Oh, yeah, it's got the definite style, hasn't it? So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's worth a go. I watched as well as a lot of Star Trek. I watched that episode of Black Mirror with Miley Cyrus, which is pretty damn terrifying.
Is it? I haven't seen that one. That's one of the latest ones.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. For those that don't know what Black Mirror is, it's a modern thing. It's all kind of dystopian sort of things, all about technology and kind of the perils of technology. And this one focuses on a pop star who's very much sort of unhappy with the way in which her image has gone, to the point where, you know, she's not expressing herself in a way that she wants to, but it's all about sort of technology and virtual assistants and stuff. It's very good, chilling production. But of course, the main thing that I want to talk about here is something that we both have enjoyed here, and it's a very old radio drama series, a radio play.
Yeah. 1968, isn't it?
1968, The Hornblower Story, which I mean, I love Hornblower anyway, as a show and as a series, but I stumbled across this radio series, and I have to say,
Napoleonic, isn't it? Napoleonic naval stuff, for people who don't know. It's also who Captain Kirk was based on.
Oh, was he? Was he really based on Horatio Hornblower?
Yeah.
I never knew that. That is very interesting. Yeah. But it's a very old sort of series, but there's just something about it. It's just so wonderfully done, isn't it? I'd sent it to you, Nick. I sent it a text, and I said, you must check this out. It's well worth a listen. It's produced by Trevor Hill, and it's got, what's it say here? And I'm just reading. Does it John Westbrook as Horatio Hornblower, but Wilfred Pickles as Admiral Parry. But essentially...
Wow. And great music by, is it Johnny Pearson or someone?
I think so, yeah. And
it's full orchestral, beautiful music.
Because I was really surprised that they specially composed it for the drama. And that's the thing about this drama. That's certainly something that you picked up on. I said, the sound design in particular for this series is really good. And you came back, didn't you? You said, wow, I was really impressed by it.
Yeah, because a lot of old radio, the sound design is very basic, but they'd really, it works really well, and I found it utterly compelling. Incredible.
It really stands up against modern things. You know, both myself and Nick coming from the background of audio drama, and both involved in the creative processes of making soundscapes. It sounds very realistic and convincing. I think the pacing of the actual drama is really good. It doesn't feel like you kind of... doesn't bore you.
Whereas, no, you're absolutely right. It's beautiful.
So I highly recommend that one. It's one of those weird ones where I don't even know if it's ever been actually released. It was originally on BBC Radio 4, goodness knows when. But I found it...
1968, I think.
Very good, very good. I found it on radioechoes.com, which has got lots of really old radio dramas on. But it's worth a listen. First episode's called The Even Chance. It's very
really good. That's all I've heard, the first episode, and it's an excellent episode. It's just sublime, I think. I've been watching... Go on, sorry.
I was going to say, the second episode, The Cargo of Rice, isn't that good, but it's worth it to get to the third one, The Man Who Saw God.
Oh, interesting. Just pop round for some tea. So, yes, I've been watching The Avengers again, black and white ones with Mrs. Peel. I've also watched... one of the Tara King ones. Oh, no, I started to watch those. And as I told Benji in a text the other day, because we were talking about Patrick Allen and what was those public information films? In the House.
In the House. We did a whole car journey just quoting him saying, because originally he said, move the bodies to another room in the house. And we said, it's just a way. He said, in the house. Was rather superb. And so... House.
And that became, we appended that to every phrase we said, didn't we? Would you like a cup of tea? In the house.
Would you like to stop off at Cobham Services? In the house. We are quite mad.
We're crazy. Patrick Allen, anyway, the voice of many commercials. in the house. And he stars in this episode of The Avengers, the name of which I can't remember now, where a bunch of golfers are going to sell secrets to the Russians from a secret base underneath hole 13 on the... And it's just anyone who gets in the way at the wrong time. First of all, he gets out a Lee Enfield 303 rifle and he hides it in amongst his golfing clubs. But the thing over the top of it, all the other golfing things have, like a 7-iron or a 9-iron. They have a 7 or a 9 on it, and this has 303 on it.
Oh, very good,
which kind of gives it away. And he just gets this out and blam, shoots people. But then later on, Victor Madden, who's in it, Madden, who's been in Doctor Who and Dixon of Dock Green. There's a famous outtake of him not being able to say Dixon of Dock Green Nick. He can't say. He keeps saying Dick not drink. Oh, can't I just say the Nick? But he was also the villain in Fury from the Deep, the lost Patrick Troughton parasitic seaweed episode, which of course I remember. Yeah. Anyway, yes, he's in it, and he starts knocking people off with he's got this sort of gun which is like a golf ball bazooka.
Oh my
god. And he
God.
fires golf balls at people and hits them on the head and kills them.
I suppose it would. It does a lot of damage.
Yeah, and it makes a real sort of noise when it hits them, of course. It's absolute rubbish, but so much fun. It's just brilliant. I do
love these sort of outlandishly ridiculous plots like that.
I've re-fallen in love with the Avengers. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Let's get on with the emails, shall we?
Righto.
I'll read this one. Ghosts of the Past. This is from... who's it from? It's from James Macaronis.
This makes me think of ghosts from the past, enemies from the future, the day the earth died in a ball of flame. Do you remember that? How can one forget?
I do. Yeah. And this was sent on the 2nd of October at 1634. Don't know what happened that year.
Find out. Keep reading.
Yeah, you find that out. He says, evening, gents. Emailing in to say thanks for the recap specials. Yeah, we've been recapping previous podcasts, and we'll continue with that. But we decided, at the instigation of Jamie Anderson, to do... the Secret Service. Anyway, they're a great reminder of all the interesting things you've covered that I still need to watch. Triffids, Quatermass, Children of the Stones. It all sounds so, well, spooky, to be honest. And that's no bad thing. As I think Jamie and Benji's memories of Labyrinth and Return to Oz underlined, so much of our nostalgia is for the slightly unearthly. Personally, I adore Labyrinth. I think it's a triumph and a testament to Jim Henson's artistry. But I know plenty of people who think it's just too eerie. While I also quite admire Return to Oz, I think Benji's right to say that it's downright terrifying. I can still remember seeing that bit with the heads at my grandmother's house and worrying Jean Marsh was going to somehow get out of the television and yikes. Labyrinth is a soulful fable about growing up. Return to Oz is a soulful fable about how the world is out to get you, maybe. Nick, I know you said you were in your 20s when these were released, so I'm curious, what film ostensibly for children really sent a tingle down your spine? Oh, I haven't read this, so I haven't thought of this. Also, as a parent, what's your point of view on spookiness? Now that I'm legally at least an adult and a writer and, let's say, a devotee of the strange, I find it all wonderful and exciting and necessary, but I don't know if the 9-year-old me would agree. Would Ben? In the vein of all that, I've been trying to get through Department S. It lacks the surrealism that makes Steed and Peel and The Prisoner so arresting. What are your favourite good, weird stories? Another long one, but you do bring out the best in us. Rock and roll, James Macaronis. Thank you, James. That's a superb email. Was that? Oh, Jamie's FaceTiming. I've missed him. Oh, hello.
Hello.
We're in the middle of doing the earlier bit of the podcast.
Oh no, sorry. Shall I go away then?
Yeah, go away. We'll speak to you later.
Okay, have a nice podcast. Bye.
Cheerio, mate. He's driving.
Good on him.
Yeah, it was ostensibly for children, a film that sent a tingle down my spine. I can't think of any children's films that... I can only tell you that when I first watched Time Slip, I stopped watching it. That's the 1970, kids time travel thing. I stopped watching it after the episode of the year of the icebox, was it called? Anyway, the icebox one, where that woman was aged to death. It frightened, the image of her all aged and everything frightened me so much. I felt sick inside and felt betrayed by a program that I thought was friendly, and then it had done that to me. Then when it was repeated 2 years later, I watched it because I was older and able to deal with it.
Couldn't resist.
About Ben and spookiness, the interesting thing, he watched Doctor Who from a very early age. I'm talking like 3 or something.
Really?
And he wasn't affected by any of the spooky nastiness of it, but we could tell when he was getting more, because as children get older, they become more aware of the world, and that's when you start to get scared. When you're really little, you're not aware of that. All you have is the love of your parents, and you don't fear anything else. But then Ben got quite fearful of stuff, and usually only when I remember in that, what was that Ice Warrior one I did on the telly? Can't remember what it's called.
Was it Cold War?
Cold War, probably called Cold War. So yeah, it was during that one when every time it got a bit dark in the submarine, he just grabbed hold of me or got close to me, and that's the first time I noticed him getting a bit upset. Because I remember there's the one that's all in the White House with the silence for the first time, and there's a bit where one of the silence finds a lady in the loo or something and then blasts her to atoms. And he just laughed his head off at that. When it happened, I looked at Steph as if to say, oh my God, it's gone too far and I don't think he should see this. But he thought it was hilarious. So it's very difficult to tell. I think I mentioned the baboon did I mention the baboon in Ad Astra in the podcast, or have I just been vaguely talking about that generally?
No, I think it doesn't ring a bell.
Have you seen Ad Astra?
No.
Of course no. It's the Brad Pitt sci-fi movie.
They're definitely not. No? Then come on.
It's just come out.
Yeah, of course I wouldn't have seen it.
You don't know what's on in the cinema. Right?
Not really. I don't care enough, because unless it's Star Wars,
unless it's Batman.
Unless it's Star Wars, Batman, yeah, I don't know, or James Bond. I'm not really too fussed with what's on at the cinema, to be honest.
I like a big sci-fi epic, and this one looked right up my street. Funnily enough, I hate the ending of it, but it's a really fascinating film and beautifully done and worth watching if you're really into your hard sci-fi. But there's a really nasty section with a couple of baboons. Which is inexplicable. What the hell the baboons are doing in a space station, I don't know. But anyway, presumably they're being experimented on or something. And it's quite nasty, but it's a 12A, so it's more implied than explicit. Yeah. Well, yeah. And that did, after Ben had gone to bed and Steph and I were upstairs watching the BBC iPlayer, he called out and I had to go down. He said, Daddy, that baboon. I thought, oh, because the baboon does something nasty to someone. So
they can be quite frightening, though, baboons, can't they? They've got those horrible teeth.
Yes.
I wouldn't trust them. There are a lot of people I would trust, and a lot of animals I would trust, but baboons aren't on the list.
I'm not trusting a baboon.
As Alan Partridge famously says, don't mess with monkeys because you will pay the price. I think you can apply that to this scenario.
Well, yes. Brad Pitt is drifting around this spaceship and he's looking for his mate, who he was on the radio to just a few seconds before, and he's gone very quiet. It's not his mate, actually, but anyway. A fellow astronaut, and they're drifting around in zero gravity, and then he finds him, but the guy's got his back to him drifting, but he's sort of jiggling up and down, and he wonders why, and you think, oh, there's something weird going on. And as Brad Pitt sort of eases himself in zero grav round this guy who's jiggling up and down, you realise the reason he's jiggling up and down is because a baboon is eating his face.
Oh no! Well, that's not so nice, is it? Oh dear, yeah, I can see why that would be pretty traumatic.
And it's already bitten his fingers off,
God.
And then it goes for Brad Pitt, which is really quite... Anyway, the baboon comes to an unpleasant end. But yeah, that disturbed Ben, but just a little bit. I just told him that it wasn't real. I mean, it was a beautiful CGI, but it was a CGI baboon, obviously. They couldn't have got a real baboon to do any of that stuff. It was beautifully done as an effect. And I just explained to him how it wasn't real and how they used Kensington gore for blood and all this kind of stuff. And he went, oh, right, yeah, and just went through it. And then he was absolutely fine, fell asleep. He's not mentioned it since. So I think kids only think things are scary if you tell them they are.
Yeah, I think they react to how you react as well.
Yeah.
So if you're scared, their automatic reaction is to be scared as well.
Yeah.
Really, isn't it? But I think it's once you're old enough to understand a concept as well. Once you understand the concept of something as to why it should be scary, it is scary. But otherwise, yeah, interesting stuff.
Well, yes, I mean, Ben was not scared of spiders when he was a tiddler, but the teachers in inverted commas at nursery taught him to be scared of spiders.
Well, that's it.
And dogs. He became scared of dogs as well. He wasn't scared of dogs either. Now he's still scared of both of them. We can't seem to do anything about it.
You wait until he'll meet a nice dog one day, and then he'll be fine. That's what happened to my cousin. She was petrified of dogs, petrified of our dogs as well. And I've always had really lovely little dogs. Then one day she just was okay, stroked the dog, was like, oh, this is fine. And now she volunteers to look after the dogs.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, Ben has met some nice dogs, and he is okay with them.
Yeah. But
he's generally wary of them in the street, you know.
No, big dogs can be frightening.
Yeah.
And snakes. Well, I've got two things to say. Firstly, 1634, not a lot really happened, to be honest. Not a lot worth reporting on. It's one of those years, really. You know, a couple of wars.
Yeah. Something about popes. There's usually a fact about a pope.
There's not really any pope stuff, really. No,
pope had a cup of water.
Pope had a cup of tea. You know, Russians vacated the camp, ending the siege of Smolensk. Battle of Nordington results in a decisive victory for the Holy Roman Empire against the Habsburg. This is my favourite one. Gunpowder factory explodes in Valletta, Malta, killing 22 people. Horrific end, but at least there's a bit of drama going on. That's not just a war. Good point, not really a lot else, to be honest. A couple of breweries opened.
Good news.
Yeah. Somebody lost their telephone, which was amazing because they weren't invented. Yeah,
no wonder they lost it.
Incredible thing.
We've been connected to anything.
We've got another email here, and by the subject of this one, which is Frozen Kids Show. Hold
on, I haven't finished with this.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm dreadful. Sorry. Carry on. Carry on.
Business about Department S. Not being as good as Steed. And what are your favourite weird stories? In Steed and for Avengers and the Prisoner, any? I've stopped you for no reason because neither of us can come up with an answer.
I can't think of any. I mean, if you're talking about a weird story, just basically the whole of the Prisoner, and especially the Prisoner. Basically, the further into the Prisoner you get, the weirder it gets, until the very end, in which you're just completely confused. I'd say
I'm a bit worried. I'm listening to my final episode of the Prisoner at the moment on audio. The final series, final 4 episodes. I think I've gone too far.
Really?
It's just so weird. I don't know what's the matter with me. Anyway.
You need to take a hard look at yourself in the mirror, Nick, and wonder where this weirdness has come from. What's driven you to the edge?
I think we know. Anyway. Sorry, I interrupted you. On to the next email. Sorry. I feel bad.
Where are we? Oh, yes. Subject in this one. Now, this is interesting because this might solve your query last week about the Frozen Kids show.
It doesn't.
Interesting.
Does it? I don't know.
I didn't ruin it for everybody. You would like a bit of suspense. Subject is Frozen Kids show. This is from Jameson Lee, who's interesting enough, in the from section of the email it says Zebra Mag, so who knows what that is. A magazine for zebras, perhaps? It was sent on the 30th of the 9th 2019 at 19:28. Well, I don't need to tell you what was going on around that time. Now, it says here, listening to your podcast today and heard you're struggling to help a fan remember an obscure kids show involving frozen people. I'd like to throw my hat in the ring by suggesting that it could be an import from Japan called Time of the Apes, which involves time travel via cryogenics. The future they end up in is a near copyright issue with Planet of the Apes. Hope that helps. Keep up the good work. Regards, Jameson Lee.
Well, I wonder whether it is that. We'll only know when Andrew Pixley finally hopefully comes up with the answer. Yeah, Thank you, Jameson, though. If anyone else has got a suggestion about it, I'd like to hear. Now then, good old Tom Hodden. Note from Tom Hodden to your Facebook page, The Benji and Nick Show, Cult TV podcast. Thomas Hodden, 29th of September. Sent it on my birthday, 2247 in the future.
Very nice of him. Very, very nice.
One of our favourites, Tom. Gents, I am thrilled to hear your recent recap of past episodes, but of course, they only mention your main feature for each, meaning that the many tangents and side discussions of what you have been watching are, by necessity, overlooked. That's a good point, Worse, since the out-of-court agreements and those heavy-handed government papers were issued, the older podcasts have been heavily edited to remove much of the shocking and controversial discussions, as though they never happened. Listeners replaying those past podcasts will now have no idea that you once revealed the shocking original ending of Brookside.
Yeah, that's true.
Mr. Blobby's cameo in Ghostwatch.
He was pipes.
The blood-chilling translations of what the clangers were really saying.
Yeah, they were all harvesting organs, weren't they, if I seem to recall, for some mindless plan.
Mindless. And the nightmare that is Rainbow's darkest episode. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
They snapped the flute. That was my flute, Bungle.
Oh dear, I'll snap your flute. Oh, he snapped my flute.
It's a shame, really, as those were amazing. Yours, T.E. Hodden. Thank you, T.E. Hodden. T.E. Hodden. And now, let's see what son of Briggs, Benedict, or Ben to his friends, has to say for himself.
Are we recording? Testing, 1, 2, 3. I think we're recording. Good morning, good night, good evening, good eve, good potato, good pear, good tomato, whatever. Good Loch Ness. I don't know what I just said.
So here we are with Ben Briggs for a brand new part of the Benji and Nick Show. And that was Ben's completely actually unprompted attempt at doing the Loch Ness game. How do you know about the Loch Ness game?
I don't. The Loch Ness what?
Well, yeah, he's so funny. And so, Ben, what are we going to discuss today?
Some figures, some DVDs, a bag. What else did we bring? I think that's pretty much it.
What on earth is that noise out there?
I don't know. I think they're in their garden, like moving something. That sounds kind of like a spaceship. It really does.
It does, doesn't it? So the bag, can you explain the bag that we brought everything out to the shed in?
Oh, there's still stuff in it. Oh, it's just that. So this is from a shop in the middle of London called Forbidden Planet, and we got this public I know, I'll just Please Public Cool Box / the TARDIS, and I think it's the David Tennant one because it has no thingy-me-jig black circle. So it has to be before Matt Smith.
Right. And that's what we brought the DVDs and figures out in?
Yes, it was just lying around next to them, so just good use of transport and related to the subject.
So what would you like to talk about first? What mystery items have you got?
1, 2 or 3, choose one.
Just a random number?
Yes, out of 3.
I'll go for 2.
Okay, we're going to be talking about a figure, because we have 2 figures, and then we'll talk about all the DVDs at once, so 1, 2 or 3.
Okay.
His hand just fell off, which I don't think he's supposed to actually know. It does have a a ring to just put the severed hand back in. I think it's in. Let me check.
Sounds like they're digging a hole next door.
Like scrap metal. Do you know that like curvy scrap metal? Sounds like they're trading that or something.
Weird.
It does sound a bit like a spade or a shovel.
Yeah. I'm so glad they started doing it while we're recording. Anyway, so tell us about this figure.
What? Ask me some questions.
Well,
The other hand has fallen out now.
obviously very sturdy, this figure.
Yes, very sturdy. I think the next thing that's going to fall off is the head.
Well, it's from Doctor Who.
Yes. Tomb of the Cybermen.
And what is the figure?
The cyber leader.
It's actually a cyber controller.
I don't know. It's cyber leader, cyber controller, one of those.
So could you describe the features of it?
Very plain, has like wires on the legs that bend if you move the legs, because it's a toy figure. And apparently the feet suddenly want to move and go backwards. It wasn't planned for that. And then same with the arms and the legs, they both have this wire that bends if you bend the features, like the elbow. The hand do not bend, they just fall off.
Yeah, I wonder why they
The
did
head
that.
does not turn because it's like a kind of bulky head, because it has like the brain cell at the top and just doesn't move. Apparently the waist does move backwards as well. And yeah.
It's really swizzling around. Okay, so this is from one of the stories. Did we mention which story it's from? Did you say?
Tomb of the Cybermen.
Tomb of the Cybermen, that's right. And that is one of the DVDs.
The top one.
Yeah.
BBC DVD, Doctor Who, The Tomb of the Cybermen, Special Edition. The Patrick Troughton years 1966 to 69. Well, 1969. 2 discs. Let's have a look inside. Yep, as promised, 2 discs, and one of them has fallen out.
I'll just put it.
Why is everything falling out or off?
I don't know, it's the faulty podcast.
This is a PG. Oh, there's a little picture on the back of some of the scenes. And there is the cyber controller on one of them. In black and white, of course, because it's the second Doctor.
How many times do you think, approximately, you've watched this?
At least 30.
But not recently.
No, not recently. Oh, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, because you've stopped watching Doctor Who, really, haven't you?
Yes.
And why is that? Because you're mostly...
I don't know. I suddenly got into drawing because I suddenly found out I can draw circles properly now, rather than being able to draw stick figures. And now I can draw like proper figures doing different poses. So.
I was thinking of computer games.
Oh, okay. That's the other thing. I've gotten a bit back out of computer games, but even when I was watching Doctor Who, there were quite a few computer games I was still playing.
And I seem to remember that every time I said, what should we watch, you went through a phase of you wanted to watch Tomb of the Cybermen.
I know, 100%. I don't know, it's just good. I like, because they're coming out of cling film. So it's just the noise. It's just amazing. And they have 3 fingers, so it's weird. Obviously, there's just 2, or like this, 2 fingers in each thing, and then a thumb. But it looks like they're like big fingers. And it's just interesting.
Anything else you liked about it? He's doing a very scary Cyberman thing at the moment.
I don't think it was very good. I was doing this with this hand.
Well, I'm just explaining it because you just went completely quiet, and this is an audio podcast, you see.
I forgot about that. I mean, there isn't any cameras. There might be one in the Dalek eye stalk, but it's facing the wrong way anyway.
Yeah. Anything else you liked about Tomb of the Cybermen? Anything else you can say to recommend it to people?
I mean, when I first watched it, the beginning was quite boring, but then as soon as they climbed up like a mountain, I think it was, and opened the doors. There were like a few puzzles and they were working stuff out. There was like this one person who put someone to sleep, I think it was, if I remember that correctly. And there were just loads of modules and secret stuff, and it was part of the things that got me into making stuff, because it's just like my dream is back then was to cover a door with cling film and run through it.
See, I didn't know that.
It was because I just really wanted to feel how it is to climb out of cling film.
Like the Cybermen coming out of the tubes.
Exactly.
Did you ever do that?
No. We never bought enough cling film.
I don't think it's possible to buy enough to do that, is it?
It really is. There's a magic trick or a summer prank in... I think this is inverted commas, isn't it?
Yeah, he's doing inverted commas with his fingers. Yeah.
And that I said prank because it's American in inverted commas, but still. And then you can say to maybe your mum, dad, friend, or that if they're around your house, or like could be older people, granddad, granny. It's probably more cruel to do it on your granddad, granny, nana. I don't know, because you put it on the door and you call them to say come in, and if you don't put your finger marks all over the cling film, it just looks clear, and then they'll just run into it and just go oh, because it feels really weird.
And then they'd be like Cybermen coming out of a tube.
Well, they're not exactly coming out of a tomb, they're kind of running out of a tomb rather than walking and climbing, but yeah.
Any final points about Tomb of the Cybermen you'd like to make? You know, the Doctor or his companions?
It has the TARDIS, the interior of the TARDIS circles.
I mean the actual programme, not the box that the DVD
Oh, sorry. There were people who wanted the Cybermen to be alive and didn't think they were bad, which was like not the Doctor and his little group, and they turned the Cybermen things on, and then they didn't get killed. I think they just got stunned, didn't they? I don't remember.
I think they get killed. Yeah.
Yes, most likely they did. That's very unfortunate. We should have a funeral for them.
Any favourite scenes?
Them coming out.
Obviously. Okay, well, so that was what my son Ben was talking about. Who knows what on earth any of that meant? And now we're joined by Jamie Anderson. Hello, Jamie.
Hello, Nick and Benji.
Welcome.
Are you pausing for effect, or is the connection just really bad?
Rubbish connection. I answered immediately.
Well, normally, of course, we call Jamie up and just irritate him, but now we've insisted he's part of the podcast for this section.
An even more intense type of irritation, thank you.
Because
we're
going to talk about the Secret Service. I was hoping someone would say that.
We certainly are, and who better to talk about it than Jamie himself, son of Jerry Anderson.
I mean, anyone who worked on the show, Stanley Unwin's daughter, would probably be better to talk to than me, a TV historian of some sort. But in lieu of all those people, not the fact they weren't available, here I am.
Yeah. Yes.
So
just because you're related to the guy who wrote it.
May I ask you, Jamie, when was the last time that you watched an episode of The Secret Service?
Embarrassingly, about 2 years ago.
Okay, well
we've watched episode 1, haven't we?
Yes, we both have. Yeah.
But Jamie, explain it. Explain the Secret Service, the concept, and everything.
Gosh, well, I mean, do you want some context in terms of the world of Jerry Anderson and why I think this crazy, nutty thing happened at all?
Was your dad having a breakdown or something?
Well, no, but maybe. I mean, everyone's allowed a few misses in their career, and I'm not sure this was entirely a miss, but it was a slight skid or something, or a...
Sounds unpleasant.
No.
Yeah,
a little bit of a misfire. So this is off the back of a a decade of success with Supercar and Fireball XL5 and Stingray and Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet and Joe 90 and all the ones that everybody knows, and then it was the Secret Service, which was only ever shown in the Midlands, pretty much.
It was shown in Southern television. I saw it.
Oh,
or maybe
I think so. It may have been repeated in Southern many years later, but on its original broadcast, it was only ATV Midlands, and there are only 13 episodes.
So I've got the information up here to say that it was broadcast. It was aired on ATV, Granada, and Southern, and they were the only regional companies that broadcasted it. There we go.
There you go. Well, I think part of the reason for that is because Lou Gray didn't like it. And the reason is he didn't like the main character in this concept. The concept is a priest called Father Unwin, played by Stanley Unwin, obviously, is part of a secret operation run by MI6, I guess, entitled Operation Bishop, which stands for British Intelligence Services Headquarters Operation Priest, as the Bishop says, I think.
He does.
And Unwin is ably assisted by Matthew, who is his gardener, and not assisted at all by the housekeeper, Mrs. Appleby, who is based on Christine Glanville's mother. Christine Glanville was the lead puppeteer, one of the main sculptors of the puppets. And Father Unwin is armed with not only the Minimizer, which is a book with a little minimizing ray in it, which then shrinks Matthew to 1/3 size, conveniently the same size as a puppet. And then Matthew hides in Father Unwin's suitcase so he can be dropped off at secret locations. But Father Unwin also has a rather nippy Model T Ford called Gabriel. I mean, already it's just sounding so weird. But also, Father Unwin has another secret weapon, which is speaking Unwinese to unwitting criminals and other people to confuse them and make them stop doing bad things. And it was the Unwinese that broke Lou Grade, and he just went, stop, in the first screening, and just said, no, finish the first 13. This is rubbish. Just, no one's going to like it. No one's going to understand it.
The thing is, Stanley Unwin was a household name in Britain at the time and before. For his Unwinese. That was his big thing. That's what he was famous for talking nonsense. And he would just go on shows and go, oh, well, they're finally. Can you do it? Can you do any Unwinese?
No. We did some scripted in the podcast once, but it had to be scripted, and even that was quite difficult.
Because it's just English with little twiddly bits and strange things added onto it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is quite particular, and I get the impression that there are some precise elements to it. But yeah, it was weird. Yeah, I do, because there's some repeated phrases and words that he does use. But Lou's concern was that the Americans would never understand it, and you kind of nailed it there by saying, oh, he was a household name in Britain.
Yes.
But not in the US. And I think that was the thing for Lou, because he always wanted something that could sell to the US, and this was so parochial and weird, he felt he couldn't.
Well, I think as well, it's the I think as well the essence of the concept itself of sort of a vicar of a small sort of community church in a very sort of English countryside twee sort of vibe. It's just not, in my opinion, it's just not going to sell to America. They're not going to. It's too far away from anything that's particularly marketable.
Well, I mean, I think if it had been done well, it would imaginatively, the Americans, I would hazard to say, and see what you think, all the Americans listening, quite like quintessential English things because they're quaint. And this is a sort of, this reflects a kind of English way of life that never really existed, but that English people sort of fantasize about, and that Americans kind of recognize as, oh, isn't it all country churches and tea and cakes and all that kind of thing. I could see that, but I mean the problem is, and what we're not mentioning here, is the way in which it was made, where it's this bizarre fusion of super marionation and live action, but live action's shot from a distance, so what the hell?
Sometimes shot close up as well, weirdly. I mean, even
for hands and things, not faces though.
Even I think even in maybe not in the pilot episode, but in certainly one version of the opening titles, it's actually Stanley Unwin that opens the. It
is him.
And there are other times in the series when it's just Stanley Unwin. I mean, walking along and putting the briefcase down, and there are some fairly close-up shots.
Right. It's weird though. How is that? Because it doesn't match. Because not only is it obvious, that one's a puppet and one isn't. It's also the lighting is totally wrong.
Well, it's real natural lighting versus massive studio lights in order to get the depth of field of the puppetry stuff. I mean,
what was your dad thinking? Why did he think that would work?
Well, there's two things. There's the conscious approach and a subconscious thing, I think, going on, and one is sort of fairly well documented, and I think is true, which is that he was just desperate to kind of get away from the constraints of the puppets. You go back to Supercar, and they've been doing Four Feather Falls, trying to make puppets walk around, around western sets and come across all the difficulties there. So great, stick them in a spacecraft of some sort, or a craft that can travel anywhere, and then you're free of that issue. And the further they went on, the more the puppets were basically sat still. Or on travelators in Captain Scarlet or whatever.
Yes. I'll get on the travelator and travel 3 feet.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, they were so slow. So there was a bit there where they'd been trying to make them walk for a long time, and he thought, I wonder if I can blend the two and try and get away from that restraint and make it as realistic as possible, which is part of the mission he was on post Thunderbirds, really, with the Captain Scarlet move to more human proportioned puppets. But also subconsciously, and this is my thing, I think genuinely that this was a subconscious effort to sabotage the puppet productions by Dad,
right,
because he was so desperate to move into live action. This gave him the opportunity to put some live action stuff in there. I mean, there's a particularly awful scene where there's an older lady puppet in a red felty looking coat escaping from somewhere on a motorbike, and they're shooting the puppet from the chest up. She bobs out of shot, and then they cut to a long shot of a man in a wig and a big red coat getting onto a motorbike in the most manly way possible and driving off. So you've got the moment of action with a human there, and the Secret Service gave them the opportunity to do that. But I really do think that he was like, I wonder if I can push this a bit, and maybe I'll get my chance to go on to live action. So
they said, well, this was so rubbish, we're going to have to give you real people in future.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
it worked.
And they did work, didn't they?
They'd made the move to live action on Doppelganger, the movie, a little bit before. So, yeah, it was a natural move.
So, Doppelganger was made, and yeah, interesting, isn't it?
With Stanley Unwin's involvement in this, was it a case of your dad thinking, who can we get in on this one? Stanley seems like a good fit. Was it a case of was he friends with Stanley? Was Stanley interested? It seems it's one of those things. It just seems such a, out of everybody, it's like Stanley Unwin. It just seems like a strange sort of, we want you. I can't explain it.
Super Mario Nation needs you, Stanley.
It's like deciding to base a series around Paul Daniels, an adventure series around Paul Daniels, the magician,
Yeah, the Paul and Debbie adventures. I mean, I can see it. So, do you know what? Dad and I met Paul Daniels once in a computer repair shop in Reading. Anyway.
Did you like him? Not a lot.
Hey! He... No, let's forget the Paul Daniels thing, because no series starring Paul Daniels was ever conceived of, sadly. But no, as far as I know, Dad met Stanley at Pinewood, just, mooching around. And
because he was in a lot of films.
Yeah,
Stanley Unwin.
He was a fan of Stanley's work anyway, and enjoyed his stuff, and said, there was just a chance conversation. He said, "Do you know what, Stanley? I really love the opportunity to work together." And then I think Dad just basically went off and thought, right, how can we get an old comedian into a series in a major role? And the Secret Service was born.
I often ask myself the same question. How can we get an old comedian? I'd like to say two things about Stanley Unwin. Aside from his Unwinese, he's actually not very good, is he? I mean, his acting is quite poor, though, isn't it? I mean, that's what really... Because it just sounds like he is reading out something that has been put in front of him. It's just... That's what really kills. I mean, your dad decided to build a series around someone who can't act.
And then reduce his ability to do anything by turning him into a puppet for about 63% of the time.
It's just odd. Also, just a hilarious fact that none of us will actually find funny. But I'd watched the starting sequence several times. Then I realised that bit where Stanley Unwin opens the net curtains. Jamie's doing a fantastic rendition of that right now. I wish you could see it, folks. And looks out of the vicarage window. What you suddenly notice is that behind the wall is like 6 inches behind him, so that is a very small room. It's like they put a bit of scenery right behind him, because obviously it wasn't a real window in a real house that they shot through or something. I don't know, but it's ridiculous. The wall is literally behind his head.
It's a secret viewing gallery thing where he can, twitch the net curtains without anybody knowing.
All vicars
inside.
have them. It's a vicar
Yeah, exactly.
thing.
Look, though, see if I might be wrong, but I think that's the situation.
I have to say, though, watching it, I did actually think, though, that he must have had a blast making it, because it looked like a great deal of fun. I mean, not only is it's quite a fun character, but driving the cars and doing all that sort of, I can imagine it would have been a different job. It's a slightly different job, and
they got out and about, didn't they?
They got out and about, but also something with presumably not
a bit of fresh air,
not an awful lot of pressure on him, but to do an awful lot.
Can you walk over here and put this briefcase down and then twitch those net curtains? That sort of thing.
Oh, fiddly died, oh, fiddly bummer.
There's one of the bits I loved about the suitcase in particular. I just thought, God blimey, I can't think of anything worse than right now, just wait there for 6 to 12 hours inside a case in this tiny little bit. As I think, oh my God,
imagine
there's going to be a trouser accident, isn't there?
Oh well, I imagine he's got a mini bar in there with whatever
and the seats are commode.
Well, obviously. I mean, there's nothing else supposed to be in that bit, is there? So it must be some sort of
that's why nobody ever finds it out, because they all go over to the case. They think, oh, what, blimey, no, I'm not going to open that.
You imagine the case has been left somewhere top secret, and then there's the villain is doing something, and then he hears a flashing noise from the case. What is that? It's also something that I noticed from the beautiful Secret Service primer video that Chris Dale did for you, Jamie.
Yes.
Is that there's a lot of puppets from previous series rejigged. Yes. Captain Scarlet is
something
in it.
Something has happened to Captain Scarlet. Yeah.
And Colonel White also appears with a moustache.
And Captain Black.
Captain Black.
They were just recycling, and I guess the budgets were reduced and various other bits and pieces. They just had to make the most of what they had.
Well, and I also watched the beginning of episode 2, and I noticed that one of the main characters from episode 1 turned up as a different character with a different voice, but exactly the same haircut and largely the same clothes.
But those things, I think, are evidence that whether it was because there were budget cuts or whatever, that there was a vibe of moving away from the puppet stuff and kind of giving less of a toss about it, to be honest. And you got that. Well, it's not unfair, is it? I mean, I think Doppelganger really, that live action film was the kind of one of the last nails in the coffin for Super Mario Nation, because Dad got a taste of doing what he'd wanted to do, which was live action features. Joe, I mean, I think it's fairly well reported that he was much less present for that. And existing members of the team were brought in to kind of do the producer roles and that kind of thing. And by the Secret Service, I think he was spending most of his time at Pinewood anyway, as I understand it. So everything about it is like reduced effects budget. It's not as exciting. It's not as Anderson, in inverted commas. I mean, I feel like I've been very down on the whole thing, but I do think it's very sweet and great fun in a silly way.
I think one of the lovely things that I really like about it is the fact that it's kind of set in, dare I say, the real world, because a lot of kind of no, but a lot of the Super Mario Nation things are sort of
real world.
Well, if you know what I mean, a lot of the Super Mario Nation stuff is kind of a stylized, sort of futuristic 60s vibe kind of thing. Whereas this is incredibly twee with sort of old cars and people driving around and rural places, and it does feel like a real departure.
Yeah.
I think it's, for what it is, it's very enjoyable. It's just a bit it's just a bit kooky.
I think it's ill-conceived, bonkers nonsense, but I thought actually it was perfectly. It was made meticulously, wasn't it?
Ridiculously.
You know what I mean? It's filmed nicely. It looks beautiful.
Yeah.
The plot is totally inoffensive. Describe the plot, Benji. Take us through what happens.
Well, it's essentially, from what I could gather...
Time's up.
Oh, all right. Yes.
No.
Well, he's sent on a mission, as it were, to investigate... around this sort of civil servant. No, not a civil servant, like a representative of another country. What's the word? Like an
ambassador.
An ambassador, yes, who's got some rather vicious plans, to which they've got to go into this hangar and essentially find a way of getting these plans. And most of the episode is set around sneaking into a hangar. And then the second half
they've nicked a computer, a mini computer.
That was it, a computer, yes.
And he's heading off on a plane, and Father Unwin has to get on the plane and
get the computer back, essentially.
Yeah.
The KX-20.
Okay, so he just drives onto. My favourite thing, he just kind of drives onto the airfield, like some bloke in this yellow Ford Model T, just like, oh yeah, let him through, he's fine. He's a vicar. What's he gonna do? What's he gonna do? Pray?
It's a very deserted airport, isn't it? Yeah.
That's why he was the perfect cover for him.
He uses his Unwinese to
baffle,
to fool the policeman. Listen, I think we've done it really. How many exclamation marks do we give it?
Can I just add one thing before, because I've been dying to say this and I think it needs to be said, is that the music in the Secret Service is by far my favourite thing. I think it's glorious, it's fun, it's catchy, and it's probably up there with, dare I say it, one of my all-time favourite theme tunes for the Jerry Anderson stuff. I think it's just great fun.
Yeah.
We haven't done it, have we? Yeah. Jamie was doing it earlier. He's got all shy now.
Well, no, it's because we were so out of sync.
Yes, I know.
You're doing quarter a second behind. Benji, who do I join in with? But it's so...
I just like the idea of three people in an utter cacophony.
We can round off with that.
Okay.
But just having a 3-part fugue... I don't think... Are there any other television themes in the world that have a fugue? It's just...
Yeah.
It's such an academic exercise. And also, it's every other show before, really... It goes straight into the main meat of the theme. You know, it's straight into action with Stingray, with Thunderbirds, and with Captain Scarlet. But this is the first step, I think, towards a more Space 1999 type thing, where he's got the weird hymn singing at the beginning, where all the lines are singing different verses of the same hymn at the same time, which is such a weird sound. It's kind of bizarrely experimental without any of the electronic stuff that had come before. But it's really cool. I love that theme so much. So I'm totally with you, Benji.
Me too. It's so catchy, isn't it?
I think in a way it's...
And he's such a smart composer, isn't he?
Clever
well, I think he's not only is he an incredibly smart composer, but I think as well it's one of those things. He's been given a job that he suddenly thought, oh, I can do something a bit different here. You know, whereas with Captain Scarlet, you kind of, you know, they say, well, do something a little bit like Thunderbirds. Well, Stingray was great. Do something, you know. Whereas this, it's like, okay, so he's a vicar, and so he's immediately thinking, oh, so we can do something sort of churchy and kind of a bit different, maybe a fugue, and it's bonkers, but it really works.
And the church bell,
yeah, and isn't that satisfying to watch as well when it comes towards the camera?
A lovely clang.
Nice old clanger. Yeah, well, I'm giving it.
So I'm giving it. Go on.
I'm going to give it a solid 3 because I think you summed it up, Nick, by saying it's inoffensive. It is what it is. I would say it's nothing sensational, but it's certainly nothing bad.
I don't know whether I can bear to watch much more of it, but it certainly didn't upset me. Hold on, Jamie gave me the box set. I bet your present was wonderful, Jamie.
Rude.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Jamie, for this.
Pleasure.
I have to say that my wife keeps texting me and says it's time for chippity chips. She wants me to go down the road and buy some chips because we just can't be bothered to cook anything this evening.
Fair
I'll
enough.
have it with salad.
Save some
But-
for us.
Okay, yeah, I'll feed them through the computer. So, Jamie, Benji and I have to decide what to do next week. I would really like to, and I don't know how possible this is for you, Benji. I just suddenly thought today, I was listening to some music. There's a great old spy movie that I love that is of no notoriety whatsoever called When Eight Bells Toll.
When 8 bells... I think it was on the telly the other day, wasn't it? Was it on Talk?
What?
I thought it was on the telly the other day.
What?
I'm pretty sure I saw it. Oh, I didn't see the film, but I saw that it was on, I swear.
Yeah.
Maybe. Anthony
I would
Hopkins.
love us to watch that.
No,
Yeah.
no, it wasn't on the telly. I tell you what, this is really weird. So my friend Tom, who's actually in the house right now doing the electrics upstairs,
That's even
he
weirder.
said to me, a great film that you might like is When 8 Bells Toll. He said, 'cause it's like James Bond, but with Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
How weird is that? Absolutely going to do it, yes.
There you go.
Nice. I
Relevance.
almost want to watch it from hearing you two rattle on about it for a bit.
It's got a great score.
Is it as good as the Secret Service, though?
Yes.
No.
Can we just swap them round? You know, have Stanley Unwin
So
with
we're-
some Bond music, and then have Anthony Hopkins walking around to doo-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo.
So, yeah, indulge me and watch that next week.
Happily,
Maybe-
happily.
Yeah, maybe you could watch it, Jamie. No, I won't drag you into our madness.
I'll
It means a lot to me, the film. There's nothing remarkable about it, but it's just a corking good old spy thing.
Well, there's something to be said for a good old spy flick, and it's like Ipcress File, you know. Love
Yes.
it, comfort spy
Same
film.
sort of vibe. Don't forget to write in to podcast@nicholasbriggs.com, by the way. We'll be reading out your emails as well next week. And so this is the point, Jamie, where we get very close to the microphone.
Sort of like this, yes.
Just a little clear of my throat there.
Oh, there we go.
That's good. And we just say it's time to say goodbye.
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 Pressing stop now. Ka-chunk.